Welcome to this episode of GymInformer podcast. I'm Chris Gilbert, your host for this episode, and today our guest is Kristin Landi. She is the owner of JK Barbell, a small but badass powerlifting gym in downtown Baltimore, Maryland. I got a chance to work out there recently. It was a really cool experience. So I'm excited to talk to Kristin about the gym. But before I get started, let me take a pause and I'll show you the photos I took when I was at the gym. All right, Kristin, before we get started talking about the gym, what was your path and how did you become a gym owner?
It kind of is a long, sort of convoluted story. Like I didn't lay awake at night as a little girl, like dreaming of being a gym owner. I didn't even find powerlifting until I was in my 30s. But I'm definitely an all or nothing sort of gal. And I was working in a commercial gym, and I had started my powerlifting team, and I left and started my own personal training business. And there just were a lot of constrictions. I was like renting space from another gym owner, and so there was limitations to what I could do and how big I could grow. And so we talked about, my husband and I had talked about many times, like someday when we could do this and someday we could do that. And I think it was maybe 6 months into being quote unquote self-employed where I was like, you know what, I'm doing all these different things and I'm seeing all these different people and all these other gym owners that are doing this. And I'm like, if they can do it, I can do it. So we started looking into like what commercial leases, how they even work. I took a class, like an entrepreneur class, it was a free program through the Baltimore County Library. And I just was like, well, my husband was very, very supportive. And he was like, you know what, we've been working really hard to improve our finances, and we can continue to work towards buying a house, or while we're young and can still like recover from it if it doesn't go well, like let's just do it. And we started looking for a piece of property like that we thought would work, and here we are.
Nice. And currently the gym is about 3,000 square feet, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's about the actual like space where the equipment is about I think it's 3,200 if we're being really specific.
Yeah, I'm getting pretty decent at guessing sizes after 300 gyms. So
I'm sure.
So it was a cool space. Like from an equipment standpoint, like it was obviously a powerlifting gym, and the powerlifting standpoint, you obviously went with a little bit higher end equipment, and then with the accessory stuff, you guys went with some old school stuff, it seemed like. And then you also had some functional fitness like area. You want to talk a little bit about like your thought processes on why you picked the equipment that you picked and why you went the direction you went?
Sure. So when we decided that we were going to pursue this, right, like the question number 2 obviously was, okay, where do we get the money from? Because like we're not independently wealthy. My personal training business was successful, but not like we're not millionaires. We don't have any family money, and we don't have like collateral in order to get a giant business loan either. We tried, just didn't go that well. So we're like, okay, well, what can we do with the least amount possible? And so I knew that I wanted to prioritize, obviously, the focus on powerlifting because I was coaching powerlifting. I was in the process of running for the state chair position at the time. I was pretty confident I was going to take over that position. So I knew that everything that I was doing was kind of focused around powerlifting. Like I do have Gen Pop clients, but even my Gen Pop clients train with a barbell. So that those, and that was what I was lacking in the spaces that I was like renting space in and like the third party scenarios. They just didn't have powerlifting style things. Like I was training in a baseball training facility, and all of their barbells were like old school like York barbells that were like 55-pound barbells, and There's only so many things I could bring in of my own, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So I went looking for an affordable power rack first. That was priority number one. And power bars. Where can I get the best power bar for my money? And like something that's going to be sturdy and like last a long time. And I did a ton of research, and I read a ton of reviews. And I also did a lot of price comparisons. And a lot of the new equipment in the gym is Bells of Steel.
Mm-hmm.
We're not sponsored in any way. They have no idea who I am. They did a really cool like Black Friday deal on their regular like basic like Cerakote power bar. And it had a 20 kilo option. So I was able to get I think I bought 5 of those on the Black Friday deal, really
Oh,
cheap.
wow.
And the power racks that we went with are their, I don't remember what it's called, but they're mostly designed for like garage gyms, but it was
Mm-hmm.
something that was like sturdy. It wasn't like the miniature size kind that you get sometimes in garage gyms. It was a full size power rack.
Yeah, no, their stuff's good. Like, I don't know if we've had Andrew Ponsler on the podcast a couple times, and he runs West Indy Barbell, and he's their North American rep.
Yeah.
So we're friends with the Bells of Steel company. So
They're very cool. They've been very like they have fantastic customer service.
Mm-hmm.
And like I've really enjoyed everything that I've purchased from them. Um yeah, that, and they're like, apples to apples across the board. Their power rack was definitely the best value, and like had all of the things that I wanted it to have. I needed to be able to bolt it down, obviously. I knew in that space, because we had already signed the lease on that space before we started looking at equipment. Well, I started looking at equipment, but I didn't buy anything and sign the lease. So I knew I was going to have to like bolt things to the floor because of the walls were not. The building is like 100 years old, and it's like original brick, which looks cool. Like it's real, has that like hardcore sort of look to it. But
Right.
like
Yeah.
if you, the brick is definitely not going to support any sort of substantial weight.
Mm-hmm.
We obviously wanted to be safe. So those were like my number one quality purchases. And then one of the very first things I ordered, because I knew it would take forever, was the ER rack. I ordered the ER rack really early on because it took like 3 or 4 months. Like we were open. I ordered it before we opened the doors. Like I think before we even had paint on the walls, I ordered it, and it didn't arrive until a month after our grand opening.
Okay.
And after that, honestly,
For,
the
not to interrupt you, for anyone who's not familiar with powerlifting, can you tell them what an ER rack is?
Absolutely, yeah. So a combo rack is sort of like what we compete on. So on a platform in a competition of any powerlifting federation, even the ones that use a monolift, they use a combo for bench press. So it's a really important piece because powerlifters have a tendency to be they would like to be very specific. They want to be able to train how they're going to compete. So having access to a combo rack is sort of ideal. And I knew it would be really important to the powerlifting community at large. And I wanted a nice one that was going to be relatively portable, because I do direct meets as well. And really sturdy and like be worth the investment. ER comes out of somewhere in the Netherlands. I'm drawing a blank right now on where. It looks like Sweden or something. But they break down into small pieces. Like they're very, very strong and very sturdy and can support 1,000-pound squat, but also break down and fit into a standard size sedan, because in Europe, they don't have a lot of big vehicles. So in order to be
Mm-hmm.
like practical, they got to break down into reasonable size pieces.
And that's the piece you have on the platform right now.
That's the piece that I have on the platform. There are other companies that make combo racks that there's not. I don't have any experience thus far with one that's made domestically that I particularly love. At the time, I think they were still developing. I don't because I think somebody makes one that they hadn't released yet. I can't remember now who it was though. Like Titan makes one, they were like on back order everywhere, and like they're a little clunky in my personal opinion. They're not good they don't break down and travel well.
Yeah. And
like the
the
road
Texas
ones,
Power ones, no, the Texas Power ones are awesome, but they don't break down on that.
right? The Texas was definitely my second choice, but the Texas ones they like make to order, which is very cool because you can get them in whatever color you want. Like that's on my bucket list. I want a purple Texas Power rack for the gym so that it matches like the aesthetic. Like that's definitely on the list for someday in the future. The Rogue ones are indestructible, but they're so hard to move. They're just really, really bulky. They do last forever, as far as I can tell, but they don't move well. I had to kind of like, I didn't have the budget to buy like whatever I wanted. I had to think of what is going to be multi-purpose as possible. So,
right. Yeah.
PR.
Yeah. And then your accessory pieces, were obviously thought out. A lot of leg pieces, a couple of back pieces, a little bit of shoulder. I'm assuming that you were very selective because of like having to be very decisive what you were getting on those pieces.
So, that was one of those things where the universe sort of said, you are on the right path, and you should be doing this. I have a that lives in North Carolina, and we met working. I am the USAPL state chair in Maryland, but USAPL is not the only federation that I work with. I believe that everyone should have a pathway to the platform, and sometimes USAPL just isn't the right fit, and that's okay. So I am also, I was a referee with WRPF, and through WRPF, I met another referee who was referee with our WRPF at the time. Neither one of us are with WRPF anymore for a whole laundry list of reasons. And so his name is Rob Walding, and he and his wife had a gym in North Carolina several years ago called Wongo's Barbell. And I don't know if you saw, there's a flag on the wall, a big giant flag on the wall, on the back wall of the gym from that gym. Him and his wife, he was directing a lot of meets, and he has like a trailer with all of his like meet directing stuff, and they had all of the stuff, their business partner, and then they went through some litigation with the owner of the building they had their gym in, and they had to their gym, and all of their equipment was sitting in storage. And I went down to Norfolk to referee a meet with him. No, I think it might have been down in North Carolina. It was. I went down to North Carolina to referee a meet that he was directing. And I had just looked at the space that we ended up signing a lease on. And I was telling him, I'm really excited. I think we're really going to be able to pull this off. Now I just got to work on trying to figure out where to get some money from because I buy all this stuff. Like if we have to open the doors with 3 combo racks, like so be it. Or 3 squat racks, like whatever it is that we need to like get it off the ground, like we'll build it slowly over time, it'll be fine. And he was like, I have all the Wongo stuff just sitting in storage, and like at this point we've accepted that another gym space in the foreseeable future is just not going to be for us right now. For my family, they had just had a baby, like they had a bunch of other things going on in their personal lives. He was like, why don't we like go through, see if there's anything you want, and then you can just like make payments. And I was like, are you joking? Because so much, yes. So we signed the lease on that space in November, and in December, my husband and I flew down to North Carolina, and we rented a Penske truck, and we spent 18 hours digging through a storage unit full of gym equipment that had been sitting and just collecting dust for over a year, and deciding which pieces were worth transporting and which ones weren't. And just going through. And so like a significant percentage of all of the accessory machines. That's why they're a little mismatched, and some of them are like black and green. Then they look a little bit odd because they were custom pieces that Rob had like worked with a buddy, and like they like thought of it in his brain.
Right. Yeah.
The lat pull down machine was supposed to be like a combo lat pull down, like seated row, but the seated row part was always awkward. And so we like don't use that part. So it was kind of like we were able to sort of take Wongo's barbell and like bring it and make it a part of the you know, butterfly that hopefully will be JK Barbell and
No, that's
repurpose a
cool.
lot of that. It was very, very cool. Rob and his wife Jenna have been super supportive of us, and they have just been really. They came down or up rather because they're in North Carolina. They came up for our grand opening, and they've been really awesome, really supportive, and really good resource because like I did not have any idea what I was doing. I'm still under the impression I don't know what I'm doing. I'm kind of just making it up as I go.
I hear that a lot from a lot of gym owners. Yeah, this is the 68th episode of the podcast, and I've heard that quite a bit. So you're not alone in that arena. One of the things
I get that impression as well.
Yeah, it's a pretty common thing. I mean, I don't think a lot of people set out to go, you know what, I'm going to own a gym one day. It's like they're either trainers or they have been to a gym and they're like, I think I could do it better. And, you know, I think it's something that comes about a lot of times or it falls in their lap. It's not something I think a lot of people just dream about. Although I've met some people who message me now that this is what I do. And they're like, hey, I want to own a gym someday. And like, I love your stuff. So there are those people out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one thing to like be a trainer and like, hey, be like, hey, it would be really cool to be able to have my own gym and do whatever I want. And when I was doing like when I was researching ahead of time and like trying to make it like, okay, what do other people do? Like and looking for other people's stories, there was a lot of that. Like, hey, you know, I wanna own a gym someday, because people think it's a cool, like, fun thing to do, and then they'll just get to work out all day, and like, it's just not that. Like, I did not have that delusion. I was old enough and I'd seen enough of how the industry works and had worked in other gyms to know that that wasn't how it was gonna go.
Yeah, most of the gym owners I know have a hard time working out in their own gyms.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah. If we get a transition, I wanted to talk to you about the atmosphere in the gym because it was really cool. Like I loved the atmosphere in there because it was, and I'm cautioning how I say this because I don't want to say it wrong, but it was hardcore with kind of a softer edge. Does that make sense? How I said it?
Yeah.
Because you've got like
absolutely.
It's a hardcore gym, but you've got like you got the light purple wall, and there's some like rugs, and like there was some interesting like elements that kind of gave it a softer edge, but it was still a hardcore gym. Like, is that what you were going for to make it a little bit more inviting and still hardcore, or like what was the thought process there?
100%. So I train predominantly women. I got into this like I taught a class at Brick Bodies in Timonium called Women Empowered, and that class grew into what Iron Damsels is today. Iron Damsels is the powerlifting team that I coach. But even my Gen Pop clients are predominantly female. And like you get this sort of in fitness, you get the bro-y, like hardcore sort of vibe, right? And then you get the little baby pink dumbbells and the Pilates and the like, don't get too bulky sort of attitude, right? And I was like, I don't understand why we can't have like a little bit of both. Like, why can't we be somewhere in the middle? The weight room can be a very intimidating place for women to go. It can be. Thank goodness we're at a place where that's not always the experience anymore. But like when I was first lifting, I was lifting in a commercial gym that had like a halfway decent sized weight room, and I was always the only girl. And even like at Brick Bodies, like the first time I remember deadlifting, I think I was deadlifting 275 pounds, which is a lot of weight, but like not mind blowing amounts of weight. But people looked at me like I had 6 heads, like I was some sort of like crazy person who was going to throw their spine halfway across the gym. And it can just be really overwhelming to be a woman in those spaces. And so my husband and I, like, we were like, okay, what are we gonna do that's different? Like, we have to figure out what is our niche in order for this to be successful. We can't just be some random hole in the wall gym with a bunch of random pieces of equipment. Like, what makes it cohesive? And at the end of the day, like, the brick and mortar space was about giving me the opportunity to expand what I was doing in the community that I was building, to give that community a home. And so
Mhm.
I still wanted that hardcore like powerlifter feel, but I wanted it to feel that way. But I also wanted it to feel welcoming, especially to the female community that I was building. So I have like, I love the imagery of the skull, like the skull, like it's one of those sort of at our bones, we're all sort of the same sort of mindset. And so
Mhm.
incorporating that sort of hardcore, like, you know, imagery, but giving it sort of that softer feminine edge to it so that it felt more welcoming and felt like, okay, like maybe I'll get tetanus, but I will also like be able to put lotion on my hands after I wash them.
Right. I thought it was
Like
super cool. And it was something I really hadn't seen anywhere else. I hadn't
I,
seen anyone else
yeah,
like try to embrace the female lifters in the way that you did. I thought it was cool.
like I have like even our membership base is predominantly we do not exclude men. Like my husband is an equal owner with me in this business and is extremely supportive. He trains there. Several of the girls that are on the team, their husbands and boyfriends will train there. And then we have just regular people from the neighborhood, like women and men that train in there, and everyone is definitely welcome. But we're definitely like building a community that has a certain vibe to it, right? Like we are very much lifting each other up and supporting each other in a way that um, it's not that you don't get that in a bigger gym because you do, but it's just a little bit different. Like it's just a little bit softer and a little bit more, you know, the team itself is a group of women that come from vastly different backgrounds. They have different day jobs, they have different experiences with sport and different experiences with exercise. And we come together in that space and we can leave all of that outside because we're just a bunch of people who like to pick up heavy circles.
Isn't that one of the great things about the gym is it doesn't really matter what you do outside of the gym to the gym community. It just matters what you do inside the gym.
Right. Like you can't go out and buy gains. You just can't. Like you either put in the work or you don't. And no
Hmm.
matter what level, like we have a whole variety. Like I have beginners all the way up to my most experienced athlete is the 84 plus world champion, IPF world champion in the
Nice.
M4 category. Okay. And everyone like but everyone is still like on an equal plane in that space because we can all appreciate the work that it takes to make progress at wherever place in that on that spectrum you are at right now.
Yeah, no, it's super cool. It's great. So you've been open for how long
We had a year in February, so
now? Okay.
13 months.
So you got a year under your belt. The gym's doing well. You're growing. Um, what's the future of JK? Are you happy with where you are? You like you're gonna be in this space for quite some time? Are you someday hoping to be in a bigger space? Are you someday hoping that maybe there'll be a second JK Barbell? Just throwing things out there. Like, what's the future hold for you guys?
um, I am for now super happy with that space. I did a lot of legwork and a lot of negotiating in my lease, so we're pretty comfortable in that arrangement for um, for the time that it needs for the business to mature to a point where financially we could take on any sort of expansion. Um, there are a couple of definitely there's a list of pieces of equipment that are on my bucket list that I would like to be able to incorporate. There are a couple of pieces in that we currently own that drive me crazy that I'd like to set on fire. Um, but I imagine that'll probably always be the case. Someday, many years down the road, I think I'd like a little bit. I wouldn't want it to be much bigger than it is because I like the vibe of it. I like the intimate feel we're able to um, like maintain. But like we held our first meet in that space in November, and I knew it would be tight, and it's a little too tight probably to
Yeah,
like to do it really well the way that I want to. Like I'm not a half-ass sort of lady. Not willing to do it if I can't do it right.
right.
Um, and it is an older building, So like having that many people in there was not really kind to our plumbing. That was definitely not a fun part of that day. And we don't have any parking. So like in my dreams, someday we can find a space where we have just a little bit more room. We have a couple more bathrooms and a little more parking, but
Yeah, but
we're
for now
not
the
in a
space
rush.
is pretty cool. So anybody who hasn't been there, it's a cool little space.
Yeah, it's definitely everything we need it to be right now. And I was very, very worried about whether or not the parking would be adequate for what we were trying to accomplish now. And I think overarchingly, it's fine.
Yeah,
We
it
are
was
in the
great for me.
city.
I was there at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. It was great for me. So just go
Yeah,
early.
we are in the city. It is not predominantly, it's all street parking.
Oh yeah.
But it's in a neighborhood, so it's not like it's in like the financial district where you have to drive around for 5 years to find a parking spot. There's plenty of street parking. You just might have to walk a block, and like we're going to the gym, so it's fine.
Yeah, and it's on a one way too, right? So it was easy to like
It is.
to get
Yeah.
in there now. So we talked a lot about what you guys are doing really well. And congratulations on how well you're doing in that first year. Are there some things you wish you were doing better as a gym owner at this point, or things like you wish this could be better, or things you wish were just going a little faster than they are?
I was definitely very optimistic in my initial projections when we started laying out like a financial plan, like when we laid out our business plan before the gym opened. Um, we have not it's not gone that way like at all. It's been much, much slower than I had hoped.
Mhm.
But my husband and I are like, we're not experienced business people, but we are experienced life people, at least at this point. So like we went in with three different versions of the plan. So like plan A was
Mhm.
this and plan B was this, and we're actively executing plan C at the moment. So we knew we weren't going to like be homeless. We have kids to feed, things like that. So we did um, account for it in that way. And I'm really proud of the way that we've been able to pivot and power through. I'm also really proud of like the way that the community has rallied and been so supportive. Like I have clients that have been with me since I worked for Brick Bodies. Like they've followed me from location to location and have been with me for 3.5, 4 years, some of them. So, um, like if I didn't have that sort of loyalty inside the community, none of this would be possible. Um,
Mhm.
at the end of the day, the product that we're like the brick and mortar is fantastic and I'm having so much fun with it. And I am continuing to work on things that continue to support the visibility of it. It's in a not super visible place, which we knew, but like we also knew we were not the sort of place that was going to draw people in off the street. Like you have to be
Right.
looking for this type of product to find it, and that's okay. So I'm trying to do things like this, and doing things, attending events, and giving out cards and shaking hands and kissing babies to try and build up the visibility as much as I can. We just recently
And you
joined
are
Rep
the
Gym Pass.
only hardcore powerlifting gym in downtown. So
Um, yeah, I mean, the closest would be like all the way on the other side. Oh, there's a 531 in Fed Hill. Um, so we're like on the north side of the city, so we're not quite downtown, like downtown. we-
right.
Um, so it's
But
much more like
there's no other like
no,
powerlifting gym anywhere near.
no, like the Johns Hopkins powerlifting team, like they get together and come and train at our gym like once a month or so because their school gym doesn't have powerlifting equipment. So little things like that that's helped to sort of like build the visibility and like just people learning that we're here. Um, but then also continuing to growing the team in my own coaching because that's the bulk of where the community comes from. That's the bulk of where our business comes from. Um, like I am the business mostly.
Yeah. I tend to hear that, especially when gym owners start out as trainers and then become gym owners. That's the way it generally starts. And then one member tells another member, and another member tells another member, and then like things start growing organically. And before you know it, you're busting at the seams. So It's just a year, so hold
That's the
tight.
goal.
It'll get there. It'll
Yeah.
get there.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like I said, I was super optimistic with some of my projections, but I think overall, especially looking over the last year and like what we've been able to accomplish thus far, I'm very, very positive that we're going to be able to continue to grow and develop and be successful.
Yeah, no, it seems like you're on the right path. Seems like you're doing well. I mean, you haven't had to go back to work yet to support the gym, so you're on the right path. I have heard those stories, so you're on the right path.
Yeah. Like I said, I have a very supportive husband who does have a full-time job
That's
so that our kids continue to eat.
So now that you've been open for a year, one of the questions I always like to ask at the end of my questions is there any advice that you would give to somebody who's saying, you know what, I think I want to open a gym? Is there anything you've learned over the last year, some piece of advice you'd be like, this is something I wish I knew before I started this process?
If you can afford to have someone else do your taxes, like 100% do that. Like there are more free resources available than people realize. And like the resources available through the library system were legitimately really, really helpful. Like I was able to feel confident in like leaving my job and stepping out and going out on my own because I understood like so much more of the intricacies of how taxes, the financial stuff worked. And like I don't have a degree in business. I don't have any of that. I don't have any background. I've managed people, and I have like some light accounting experience, but like nothing like this. So I had to really like I was like, how do I do this without like going back to college? And legitimately, that course that I took through the library was the cornerstone of being able to execute all this. Like I know the fitness. I know that part. I live and breathe it every single day. I like it inspires every molecule in my body. Like that part is easy for me. The training and the juggling clients and managing the schedule and all that stuff, that stuff's easy. I can do that in my sleep. Because I love to do it and I've spent a lot of time educating myself and seeking that out. This stuff was stuff that like the business side stuff is stuff that you have to be able to do if you're going to own a business.
Right.
And I think that that's where I am. It was a friend that I was working with had recommended it to me. I don't know. Not sure if I'd have come across it on my own or not. But it was really, really an important part of helping me feel more confident to take this on in the first place. Because we are self-funded. Like we have no major investors, nothing. Like we have pinched every single penny we have. We have micro loans from a couple different places and a whole pile of credit card debt. And like being able to manage that and understand how business credit works, how negotiating a lease works. Like I went into that lease negotiation having a basic understanding of how a triple net works and what that even means. And I think that was super important in making sure that I made decisions and I made negotiations in that initial meeting in order to make sure that we were okay. We have 6 years to figure out how to make this work before we have to figure out either how to renegotiate or find another building. So like that's just one thing I don't have to worry about. Like the overhead, our actual day-to-day operational overhead is very, very low on purpose because I knew we were taking on all of this debt and I knew that it may not grow as fast as I wanted it to.
Mm-hmm.
Did that answer?
No, it's super smart. And I actually I didn't even know that the library had stuff like that. And that's a great advice.
It's a program that they run a couple of times a year. I know I did it through the Baltimore County Library, and I don't live in the county, so like you don't have to be a resident of that county. I live in the city. But like it's limited spots and they only open it up like a couple of times a year. But like if you can get in there and do it, like they bring in a tax attorney and they bring in people to help you understand like exemptions and how like receipts and home office deductions and mileage deductions and how fleet taxes work and just all kinds of different things. they also like they spend a great deal amount of time about talking about like marketing and marketing plans and business plans and banks and um just all kinds of different things. And some of it was stuff that like I was already aware of, and some of it was stuff that I just legitimately had no idea what I was jumping into. And so it made me feel considerably more confident. And it was legitimately a free program. Like that wasn't a thing I paid for. It wasn't a thing.
That's super
And
cool.
you can schedule a meeting like with their small business, like they have a small business coordinator, like because there's like funding, I guess, through I don't know if it's state funding or federal funding to support the growth of local businesses. And so
Mhm.
they are resources there to help you like figure that stuff out and navigate it. And there are even resources that will help you do your taxes. And most of
Nice.
those resources through the library are free.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, that's great advice. And that's one we hadn't heard yet, so that's super cool. Any free resources are always welcome resources, I'm sure, to most
Yeah.
businesses. So that's super awesome. I didn't have any other questions. Is there anything else you wanted to tell anyone about JK Barbell before we sign off?
Come visit, come check it out. Like, I can obviously I've poured my heart and soul into it, but it keeps growing and keeps being what it is because we have a fantastic community. And I don't think anyone has come in and like worked out there or started a membership there. Like obviously most of our members are in the neighborhood, but like I have people who come from all over just to come and like be able to get in a powerlifting workout. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it's a good vibe. I promise.
No, cool. I like it. So, all right. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more great content.